Hey guys, it's Muffin, and I've been streaming a lot of Diablo 4 recently. I played the main campaign on a Necromancer on hardcore, that died. Then I started playing like a Rogue, got it to like level 40, that died. And then since then, I've also been playing a lot of Barbarian, got it up to 87, and then playing another Rogue so I could play with my friends. And then I was trying to learn how to speedrun the campaign, but because I wanted to like try and race in Season 1, I wanted to start learning it, and then I realized that you can't. We don't have to replay the campaign, so it's all going to be end game pretty much from here on out, unless I decide to do the campaign for some reason. But that actually got me thinking and has kind of made me think more about an idea or a thought that's been in my head, and it addresses a complaint a lot of people have had about the end game of Diablo 4 in general since its launch, and that is Nightmare Dungeons. Nightmare Dungeons. Well, first of all, everyone complains that there just isn't endgame. The only endgame that is Nightmare Dungeons and Uber Lilith, who is like unkillable. Only one person on hardcore has killed it, and there's a couple hundred that have killed it on softcore. Those of you who don't know, if your character dies on hardcore, it's dead forever. And softcore is just that doesn't happen. So a lot of people have been complaining about Nightmare Dungeons, but we haven't really seen a lot of solutions. The main thing is that people have asked to teleport to the dungeon instead of having to walk to it. I slightly disagree with that, but I think if you watch the video, it'll make sense, because it's not. I just think that's the wrong solution, and I have a different one. And I know that, one, Blizzard might not even see this, and two, even if it did get implemented, it might not be till like Season 3, probably at the earliest. But I just wanted to at least put it out there. It's been rattling through my head. Maybe some people have things that they might want to add that it would actually make the game better as well. Or maybe you guys even have your own idea on what would fix Nightmare Dungeons and kind of the end game for Diablo 4, and just make the game better, and that's all we're really here for. And so, just for a quick refresher, just to make sure everyone is on the same page, and that this video actually makes sense. Nightmare Dungeons are the main endgame of Diablo 4, and it's most of the content you'll do after you beat the main campaign. Also, if you make a new character after you've beaten the campaign, you'll most likely skip it, and then you're actually doing the endgame, because of scaling, all the way from level 1. So even level 1 to level 100, it's all revolves mostly around Nightmare Dungeons. So it's boring. It's very repetitive. There's a lot of complaints about it. So I have a couple of pitches about how this could work in a better way, largely using the systems that already exist. So how it currently works is you will get a couple of drops of sigils, probably from like the Tree of Whispers, as well as when you run Nightmare Dungeons, that will drop some sigils. You have a sigil, it has a certain tier of sigil, and the level of monsters that are in this sigil are 53 higher. So if you have a level 1 sigil, the monsters will be 54. So if you want to do a dungeon that's your level, you'll do your level minus 54. The main problem with this is, there's a couple. One is I pop this dungeon, I just use it, I open up my map. Oh, actually, this is like the best. This is the best dungeon, because I just teleport right here and I walk over to the dungeon. But let's say we pop literally any other location. So we just lost that other dungeon. So now we're going to the Black Asylum. The closest is probably Kyovashad. And so we have to teleport to Kyovashad, get on our horse, which always bugs out for me for some reason. It's literally every time. And take the long journey to the dungeon. It didn't take that long to do that little transition. It was about 35 seconds. But the main thing is that if you're trying to like really level up, you're trying to do a lot of Nightmare Dungeons at the same time, you're going to probably do 30, 50 dungeons, right? And that adds up, that 30 seconds. And that's actually like, this is a pretty quick walk. There's one dungeon way up here. That is, yeah, Sunken Ruins is miserable. That's like a minute and a half or so. It's so bad. So if you do 60 dungeons, even if it's over several days, that's can be anywhere from like 30 minutes to a couple of hours of time that's just walking. It's a big waste of time. A lot of people hate it, and it's just not good. The second one is it's relatively boring because it's repetitive, but you also have no like guaranteed rewards from it. You're just kind of killing things and hoping something good drops. Now, I'm not saying that dungeons should start giving the grandfather or anything like that. Maybe that's from Lilith. Some people even think that's a little contentious, and then it should be as uber rare as it is, grandfather and Shaco. For people who don't know, they're like extremely rare. I think we have like 2 or 3 confirmed cases of either of those, like in the world. It's insane. They're very rare. I have a solution that kind of deals with both of these. Now, a lot of people think that what the solution should be is you pop a dungeon and then you can just teleport directly to that dungeon. This is gonna be a weird analogy, but okay, stick with me for a second. When I was a kid, and I think a lot of people did this in high school or middle school or whatever, you sit there and have your calculator on your desk, and you just hit like 1 equals, and then you do like +2, and then you just hit equals sign over and over and over again to see the number get bigger. This is a stupid thing to kind of like think about, but this is something that used to happen to me a lot as a kid. And then you get bored of it after 5 minutes. It's really fun for a second, and then you get bored of it after 5 minutes. That's how I personally feel. Pop a dungeon, open map, teleport, go into dungeon. It just feels very just hitting the equal sign over and over again. I don't know. That's a personal complaint. Maybe it's not for you, but it definitely does feel that way for me. Another problem that I have with it, I do genuinely enjoy walking around on my horse. I'm very proud that I got myself this ghost horse. I think it matches very well with my kind of ghost attire, my transmog. I personally am a huge fan of being able to actually experience myself and see myself in contrast to the world. I was kind of trying to do like a wraith barbarian type of thing, like a ghost warrior. I love the aesthetic, so when I got the horse drop, I thought it was sick. And so even being in the ice, I love seeing myself to the world, and I think that the whole point of this game is revolving around really getting to connect your character and your experiences with Sanctuary, and really being able to learn about the world. And I feel like teleporting kind of is a big disassociation. Now, I'm not saying that we should have to walk to every dungeon. I think this walk 30 times is miserable. But I do like doing it once. Like every time I'm going to a specific dungeon. But I also think that you should be able to solve that problem of kind of like not knowing what you're going for, of target farming. So my proposition, what I think should happen, is when you open your inventory and you go to consumables and you click on a sigil, you right click it and it pops the sigil. What it does is not that it makes a random dungeon all over the world. Like, well, I think there's only 30 that can be nightmare dungeons. It doesn't make a random dungeon nightmare. Instead, you go to a dungeon and you make that dungeon a nightmare dungeon. So it's an actual like usable item that you sit here and put on the dungeon. Now, what would be the point of that? It solves a couple of things. First of all, people will like certain dungeons more. They tried to nerf so that all the dungeons are the same so that people will actually play nightmare dungeons because of the world first to like hardcore race. I think that's stupid. I think you should want to like dive into enjoying certain dungeons. How many is it? 120 or something like that? You have so many dungeons. Why would you make people want to not use certain ones? Make people like them. And how do you do that? Is you make it so that every dungeon probably could be a nightmare dungeon. Like I said, this probably wouldn't be till season 3, so they add more and more. But then also, kind of to solve the target farming issue a little bit. So if you go to the Codex of Power, every dungeon is associated with a specific legendary power. This is Core Dragon, which when you complete for the first time, you get Aspect of Anemia, which gives you lucky hit direct damage against bleeding enemies, has up to a 20% chance to stun them for 2 seconds. This is only when you complete the dungeon for the very first time. I think it would be kind of cool if in some way they incorporated making this aspect that's associated with this dungeon already drop when it's nightmare version, because the end game is all about min-maxing. So if you're trying to get a max roll, or at least higher rolls on your legendaries, I think you should probably have a higher chance of being able to get that legendary power from this dungeon if it's a nightmare version. Now let me clear it real quick. Let me hop in, because I do believe there's a very natural way to already do this. Because when you finish a dungeon, it already gives you completion rewards, and that completion rewards is normally a legendary item as well as a rare item. So you wouldn't even have to increase like the drop rate of specific types of like the loot table or whatever for what's able to drop in a dungeon and make it more affix power that are for everything that drops in the dungeon. It could literally just be the legendary that drops at the very end, and obviously you have a chance at dropping unique, but just the legendary. And it gives a very slight chance, a very small nugget of being able to improve a specific legendary power that you're trying to upgrade. Now, you might be thinking, Muffin, that gives too much power and people are going to be able to like max roll all their gear. Well, first of all, not every aspect is available in the Codex of Power. There's only 115. I think there's at least another like 50 that are just not in here at all. But then the other thing is they could just update the loot table or like the percentages, that so like the idea of a max roll doesn't roll every time, but at least like more, say you come in with a Codex of Power imprint, you can at least get an upgrade right? So it doesn't have to necessarily be like you go from like this is 6 to 16. It doesn't have to be you can only get 16s. It could be like, oh, it has a pretty decent chance at dropping 8% critical chance that it goes up, or 9. And then you just like are grinding over a period of time casually, because you're also leveling up your glyphs at the same time, right? Like you want to get glyph upgrades, you want to upgrade yourself, you're looking at your other gear, maybe you're picking up emeralds to get like upgraded emeralds. But this would just give a little bit more intention onto why am I picking this specific dungeon, and that answer being because it's potentially going to give me an upgrade on this specific imprint that I'm trying to find the perfect roll on. So I think that would be a good idea, but maybe you still, even after that little tangent, think that it's too much power. Okay, that's fine. Maybe you keep. Maybe I'm have too big of a scope of what this game could be, or how much power you should be able to get, and you rein it back into maybe there's only a couple of dungeons that can be nightmare dungeons as well, and you keep it kind of like the same value as here. Maybe instead of doing what you get at the end of the dungeon, and that it being an aspect that is based off of what's in the Codex of Power, maybe it could be, okay, you're guaranteed for that ending item to be a helmet, or for it to be shoes, or for it to be gloves. That's already something that's in the game, because obolds work this way. Obolds, you go to the mystery vendor in town, and you gamble, and you can select what type of item you want to do. If it's sacred or ancestral, it kind of shows you. And you're rolling, and you're looking for a specific aspect of that type. And so, because only, I mean, are you looking for a legendary item of that type, and then hoping that an aspect you like comes out of it? Or that you just get an upgrade from the item itself. So it's already in the game. This would just allow you to do it via dungeons, which don't naturally give you obolds except for a couple of different events. So I think that would make Nightmare Dungeons a little bit better. Another reason that personally I think it would be cool to be able to go to any dungeon and be able to make it into a Nightmare Dungeon is because it gives, one, freedom to the player. They can like a dungeon and be able to run it. And I think that's personally really cool. But second is Helltide. This is a type of content that currently I don't think exists in the game at all, and can't really exist with the current function of the Nightmare system. Is imagine Helltide is up. Already Helltide's really cool, and you get to go in and you get to get specific rewards. But imagine going into a Helltide and running a dungeon, a Nightmare Dungeon in a Helltide, and that multiplicatively, like, boosting, like, in some way the rewards. Oh, 1 second. The rewards, as well as the difficulty of that dungeon, and maybe the rewards are like consumable or resource based. Oh, that creeped me out. Maybe those are resource based. Maybe this could be something that added into a later season. It could be a seasonal mechanic, or maybe you just get some of those. It's a specific item, or maybe you just get Forgotten Souls from it. I think it'd be so cool to be running a Nightmare Helltide dungeon. Seems cool to me. I don't know why you would think not. And it kind of doesn't work for the system right now, because you'd have to go, okay, what dungeons in here? Like, it doesn't show you which ones can be Nightmare Dungeons. So there's 3 options right now for this Helltide: Sunken Ruins, Calibel's Mine, and Howling Warren. I don't even know if any of those are, but I can tell you I don't have any. Yeah, so I would have to literally sit there and roll a whole bunch of dungeons to even attempt to get one in here. Whereas if you're rolling, if it's a craftable that you can apply to a dungeon, you can sit there and roll a whole bunch, and you can find one that has really good, like, affixes on it, and that you really want to save for a Nightmare Helltide dungeon, and you can actually, like, save it, so when the Helltide's up, you could go and do a Helltide dungeon and actually be really good. Maybe it's magic find. Maybe Helltides do a lot of fire damage, so you can have, like, one that gives you fire resist or bonus, like, frost damage, but I don't think damage actually works that way. It's not Pokemon, but something like that. I think it would be really cool, and that's kind of like the idea that's running through my head. I just thought I would share it. Maybe Blizzard, if you're watching this, you can steal it. Please, I would just want the game to be better. And maybe if you are watching this video, please feel free to let me know if I'm stupid and this is a bad idea, or maybe if you have your own idea on how they can improve Helltides, or just the end game in general, or Nightmare Dungeons. I don't know. I like talking about Diablo 4. You can also come to my stream. I stream at twitch.tv/murdermuffin. Link will be in the description. And as always, I've been Muffin. You guys have been amazing. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.